studio, call up a friend, hey, come by, let's make some music, just because, for no other reason but to just have fun, and financially feel comfortable with it, right? Because like I had my 2-3 days, I made my money mixing, I'm good for the week, cool, let's have fun.
It's so hard to do, right? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Technically, you could
dream.
reverse engineer it, right? You could say like, okay, if I get 3 mixes a week, we can call it a day, and then I could do whatever else I want. But then we get sucked into the allure of like, oh, one more client, or
Right.
you have to be really, even besides the fact that it takes a long time to have that kind of clientele to be able to pull that off.
Yeah.
But like, it's so hard to actually do it mentally.
100%.
Say no.
100%. I am fully aware that it's a dream. It's something that I'll see how close I can get to it, but it's not
a good goal though.
It's not a what do you call it? Like a sound business plan per se. It's a very difficult one to reach. But
it's a sound mental health plan.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I'll see how close I can get to it over the years. But that's
your goal.
I have that goal, that vision in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we've had such similar. I'm like just like listening to your story. We've had like very similar trajectories because I spent a lot of years pursuing a wedding band here in Israel with my friends, and like that was my business. That was like the bulk of what I was doing to make a living for about 5 years. And I was always doing studio work during the day when I wasn't gigging, or I would try to hustle. But I realized at a certain point I can't do both.
Mm-hmm.
I can't push both.
Yeah.
And I realized I wanted to be in the studio, really.
Yeah.
So I just left the management of the band. I still play occasionally. I'm not fully out yet, 100% of gigging. But like I had to make the decision of like, no, this is like, if this is what I really want to do, then you just have to like cut the cord to a certain extent.
Exactly.
And it really was a hard cut because like I just like slashed my revenue when I did that.
Exactly.
And
I think it's the way I see it is it's a commitment to self, right? It's a commitment to self and the understanding that you can be a jack of all trades, but if you really want to be a master of something, find the one, maybe 2 things in this industry that you can truly master and be really good at. And that's I suppose some people are happy being jack of all trades, and that's fine. Personally, I want to be a really good mixing engineer. Like, I really want to be the best fucking mixing engineer there is.
Nice.
Now, of course, I'm saying that and with the full realization that doesn't really exist because it's such a subjective thing, right? The best mixing engineer in the world might not be the right one for a particular band. But I guess it comes down to an internal feeling, right? If you are really happy with your results, then that's what counts at the end of the day.
Right.
Other people are going to notice it and follow. And if you're really happy with your work, chances are you're going to find the people who will be as well over time. So just to clarify, that's what I mean. But like, I want to be the best mixing engineer. Like I guess it's more about like self-fulfillment than anything else.
You want to believe that you're the best mixing engineer you can be.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. With time to spare and chill.
Exactly. And just have fun playing music with friends.
Yeah. It's so hard because when we're in that grind mode, it's so hard to remember that we're in this because we love it and it's so fun and and it can be, and everything can become a job, right? Like, and it is a job, right? Which is important, and it is a service business, but we have to remember why we did it and connect with that reason.
Right.
Otherwise, it could go to unhealthy places.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And also I just wanted to say like 2020 rocked my trajectory as well. So like I know a lot of people were a lot of people I spoke to were unaffected by it basically. Oh, I just kept mixing, I just kept mastering or whatever.
Right.
I was feeling a really good trajectory right as 2020 hit with the pandemic or whatever. And I was like, okay, a few months, I'll write it out and it'll make itself up. And then again, it was just like roller coasters. Like I'd have June would be really busy, and then like October would be nothing, and and then finally by like September of like 2021, things kind of normalized and the trajectory kind of
Yeah.
course corrected.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a really hard year and a half, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So for me, that was a little later. For me, I started feeling like things are normalizing again around the beginning of 2021. So like very end of 2020 into 2021, it kind of felt like people were starting to like understand the rules of COVID a little more, and like, all right, what's allowed, what's not. Cool, let's do a test before we go into a session, and we're starting to like kind of get a hold of it. And people were starting to book sessions again. We started feeling comfortable about it again, sanitizing everything and all and being careful. Talks about the vaccines were coming out. People were feeling hopeful, It's like it was starting to come up again. And then the next chapter of the story is that the end of February of 2021, we had a flood in the studio.
Oh my God.
Yeah, a pipe broke, flooded the studio. Thankfully, the water did not come raining from the ceiling. It was more like from the ground. It like flooded and saturated the ground, and the water came up. I'm saying thankfully because by far most of the gear was okay. It was everything was elevated from the ground. Nothing, moisture, affected a couple of pieces, but in the big picture, like could have been so much worse if water came raining from the ceiling. And it was overnight, so like the water had several hours before anyone really
found it.
Yeah, found it. So we're forced to shut down. Like as soon as things were starting to look up with COVID, flood happened, and had to shut down the studio and start construction. Now we were renting, so insurance and all that, like everything was completely out of our hands. We're just like, okay, I guess we'll sit here and wait until things get sorted out. There's like nothing we could do about it. And the construction took way longer than it should have. It was a decent sized space, but it wasn't that big of a space to replace all the floors in. Like when I looked at the damage, and of course I'm not a professional in that, water damage and reconstruction, but I thought maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month. A month is like leisurely work to redo all this. It took them 6 months. Wow. 6 months of just, sitting and waiting for something to happen.
Wow, it's miserable.
Yeah. Now, about 2 weeks before the construction ended, mind you, through the whole thing, I was in talks with the contractor and builders on how this needs to be rebuilt to still be a studio, right? Because, there was the floating floors, the double walls, like all the studio stuff that we need to reconstruct to those specifications, where the cables run through the floor and all that. So I was in talks with them all throughout, and about 2 weeks before the construction ended, conversations began with the landlord, and some bullshit came up.
Oh man,
that both of us were just like, me and my partner were like, no, we're not gonna do that, and so we never ended up moving back in. That was the end of that.
Oh my God. Shit.
Yeah, so I have a lot of gear in storage still. That eventually
That's crazy, dude.
I'll figure something out with. Yeah, but here's the thing. You know how sometimes the world throws stuff at you and is just like, what you gonna do now? Whether you want to call it God or the universe, however you look at things, they test you. So that flood put me in a position that I was just like, okay, now what? Like I need work. Like I don't have a studio. I don't have anywhere to perform that work. I'm not quite getting paid enough per mix to rent out another studio, right? Because that would just like all the money I get paid, I'm just giving someone else to rent out the studio. Like that wasn't an option. Setting up in my apartment again wasn't really an option. also at the time I was still, hoping that I'm going to get the studio back. That was like just as the flood happened. So I didn't want to set the whole thing back up in my apartment just to tear back down, move back to the studio when it's done with the construction. So I was like, all right, what do I do? Like, I need money. So I was like, do I really have to go back to like retail work or like work at a restaurant? And I was like, hell no, I'm not doing that. Like and no offense to people who do, like by all means, but like, I don't know. I just like, I've already lived the dream. Like I have it. It's like right there. I do not want to go back to working a miserable job that I'm not going to enjoy. Like I just left one that paid me a lot of money because I wasn't happy.
You already paid your dues, right?
Right.
Like you already did.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it. Yeah. So I was just like kind of, going through it in my head, like, what do I do now? And basically the best idea I could come up with was, what if I go assist someone else, another mixer, another engineer, producer, whatever it is, mixer, preferably. And I kind of thought of it as like, okay, in a way, it'll be a step back because I am already a working mixing engineer and assistant jobs are typically for people who are fresh out of school and, like younger people and all of that. And I was like, okay, kind of a step back in a way, but in another way, like you never know. Like I might like pick up some new things, learn some stuff, make new connections, like, and meanwhile make a little bit of money to get me through, right? So I was like, okay, I think that might be the thing to do. I reached out to another friend, another mixing engineer, and asked him, hey, do you know any mixer who may be looking for an assistant? And in my mind, I was thinking, all right, let's find like a mid-level kind of mixer that's like just above me in the general career path, or just, a little farther in their career than me. And he was like, no, I don't, but you should probably reach to Jason Joshua or Tony Maserati. And I was just like, yeah, right. Like they're like the gods of mixing. Like how am I going to touch that? But then like a few seconds later, I just thought, wait a minute, why not? Like, why not? Why am I limiting myself like that right now? And that was a big moment of like, wow, how long have I been getting in my own way, and limiting myself, thinking that I cannot reach to that level and only trying to reach to, lower level than that or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big lesson for me from doing this podcast is like how approachable people in our industry are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you would think they're not, but then you meet them and they're totally fine and chill and normal and,
Exactly.
I think after I like interviewed Vance Powell, that kind of took the edge off for me, and I like now I don't work up a sweat when I interview people because it's like, oh, they're just like, They seem like they have like this like aura around them or whatever, but they're just so normal and almost always regular,
absolutely
nice people.
I mean, we're all from the same pool of people,
right.
of way of thinking of So I had that moment, and then I was like, all right, well, let's see, who are my top my absolute favorite mixers who are still in LA, because of course there's people from other cities, but I do want to stay in LA. And I put together a short list of like my 3 favorites. Updated my resume in like a one-sheet kind of form. Wrote a cover letter to each one of them. And it took me a week to put all that together. Meanwhile, I was kind of preparing myself for disappointment in a way. Preparing myself for, okay, I'm going to have to keep bugging them. They're not going to email me back right away. I might have to come up with my next 3 favorites. Once I've exhausted these and they're not interested or whatever, I might have to go over to like the next list, right? And I was like running through all these scenarios in my head. So it took me about a week, and I sent 3 cold emails. I sent an email to Tony Maserati, Manny Marroquin, and Bob Horn. Out of the three,